Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. This Saturday is UFC 288 going down in front of a live crowd in Newark, New Jersey. It's in a huge fight for the Bantamweight strap. Defending champion Aljamain Sterling taking on one of our favorites, the Olympic champion, the double champ, Henry Cejudo, man, coming off a 3-year layoff, excited for his return. And on 2-3 weeks notice here, props to these guys. It is scheduled for 5 rounds. We got top welterweights Gilbert Burns taking on Belal Muhammad, which I think we have confirmed is a number one contender fight. And in the feature bout of the evening, Jessica Andrade dipping back down to 115 as she's going to take on Xiaonan. Lost a fight in Daniel Santos earlier today, so we're left with 13 fights total in the books to kind of get into. Before we do, make sure to like the video, sub to the channel if you guys haven't before. We got back to the winning ways last week, man, and for your card, Song really showed up. He really impressed me, won every single round, got the championship round finish when a lot of people were doubting his cardio and gas tank to be able to go deep in a fight. Looked incredible, definitely a step in the right direction. I think it's 3 weeks in a row in the casual cap here. He got you on a little streak going, but no issues wearing it, man, when I'm tossing you over 2 profitable cards to recap.
Yeah, much better breaking down cards when we're both in the green. We'll start off with your card first. Your night started off pretty rough. You had Egger in a parlay with Caio Baralho, and she just didn't deliver. And you said it best whenever the fight ended. You said betting juice on women's MMA, it bites you in the ass at the end of the day. That was a 1.5 unit loss. Then you had Boudet by decision, my prop of the week last week.
Sir.
Came in awesome, plus 350. Now, it was close, and we might have gotten it just one by the takedown at the end of that round. Right. But as far as a pick'em fight goes, being able to get Boudet's most likely path to victory at plus 350, I think it was an excellent hit for sure. And then you kind of hedged on the Egger to win by taking the under 2.5 rounds. Russian Ronda was able to get that knee bar. I don't think anybody necessarily expected that, but you got the under 2.5 at plus money. And then you ended up the night plus 2.03 units with a 68% ROI. And it's a good way to be wearing the casual cap for sure. Taking a look over at my card. Yeah, you touched on Song. He really delivered. Just had to trust with my gut. I didn't have much on the card before this, and I felt good about Song. He ended up closing as like a plus 115. So the line movement all the way up until the very beginning of the fight was going in the direction of Ricky Simone. Happy I got on it at plus money. And then Charles Johnson, how that fight broke down around the second round, I thought it was going exactly how I thought it would. Cody Durden's cardio was going to fall off a cliff, but he was able to maintain that back position and ride it out for a really, honestly, a 30-27, a solid win. Right. But he had to dig deep for that for sure. We already touched on the Boudet by decision. And then my other bet that lost was Rogerio de Lima by TKO at plus 225. I thought it was going to hit multiple times. I thought that lead leg of Cortez Acosta was getting eat up. Right. But he's shown a couple of times that he can take as many leg kicks as he needs to get to the decision. So either way, Rogerio Lima was the pick, but he didn't get it done by TKO. I ended up the night plus 3.33 units with a 78% ROI. And we're looking to keep the ball rolling, get back on our streak. Yeah. And good week of betting. We'll start off the night with the main event where we see Henry Cejudo taking on Aljamain Sterling for the Bantamweight Championship. I'll start off by saying I'm not a huge fan of Aljo as a fighter. Don't get me wrong. I do understand that he's a good fighter, but I'm not sure that the praise that he's been given leading up to this fight is necessarily warranted. Take a look at his title defenses, and I just can't shake the feeling that all of those defenses need a little asterisk beside them. We think about the first title fight with Peter Yan, where Aljo had the performance of the decade, taking that illegal knee and getting the W by DQ. The second fight, I will admit, he made those adjustments to his game that allowed him to just eke out that decision win over Yan, which was a tough pill to swallow. I did have Yan. I did think he was the better fighter, but, backpacking for a round, it's hard to argue. Even though it's not pretty to the eye, it gets the job done. And then his last title defense against TJ Dillashaw, TJ we didn't know coming into the time, but he was injured. His arm popped out of place like 7 times during the fight. So even then, it's like that's not even a weight cut TJ Dillashaw. I think TJ Dillashaw with one arm is a much easier win than Henry's whenever TJ had his weight cut. Now on the side of Henry, I do kind of have my doubts breaking this fight down. The biggest one being that Henry's coming off of this huge 3-year layoff. He's 36 years old now, and he's still fighting up a weight class from the original weight class that he got his championship belt. And he's going up against a guy with a lot of physical advantages, 3 inches of height, 7 inches of reach, and that would be a tough challenge for anybody to overcome. Now, acknowledging the concerns for both of the fighters, I try and look at the positives that each of them bring to the table. And on the feet, I think we have a relatively competitive striking comparison. Aljo, he has the volume and the length on his side, but I think Henry is the much more cerebral fighter. I think that he, has more setups, the feints, the power, just a lot more tools overall on the feet. And then you look at the wrestling side of things, and I don't even think it's close. We've got an Olympian, a gold medalist at that, versus a D3 wrestler that never won any major tournaments. It's just concerning. I think the mental aspect is what Henry has over Aljo, which is going to carry him in the later rounds. It's going to win him the rounds, get him the nod on the judges' scorecards. And I think that people just don't understand what it takes to be an Olympic gold medalist. When I look at Aljo, I see somebody who took the easy way out in the Jan fight, admitted that he won't fight Mirab, the number 1 contender in the division, because they're friends. You go back through to his college wrestling career, and his best ever placement in a tournament was second. And that was because he forfeited the championship match because he didn't want to fight his teammate. I just think that all of those things are things that you would never hear from the Henry Cejudo side. Henry's always kind of been, him versus the world. And I think that that's the edge that makes a good fighter a great fighter. Now, obviously Sterling could find himself backpacking for a round or two and sneak out a victory. I'm not, overlooking that by any means, but I think barring him holding on for dear life, like we saw in the Jan fight, I'm fairly confident that Henry's going to pick him apart, similar to Peter Yan in their first fight. I think at a certain point, Aljo will run out of the offensive attacks he has on the feet, and we'll see him try to attempt to mix in the wrestling, and he'll be extremely unsuccessful against Henry. Was wanting to sit on this line. I thought Henry, being with the 3-year layoff and how old he is, that the line would be moving the opposite direction. But that's not the case. We're still kind of seeing it sitting at Henry minus 120. And sooner rather than later this week, you'll find me on his line. I'm just not committed to the movement just yet.
Nice, man. A lot of same iterations here, but a little bit tougher for me to get to the Henry side. But you have Aljo, like you talked about, who you're not a fan of. You absolutely lose a lot of respect for him when you see him handle the Peter Yan opportunity, situation, whatever. And then I've just always been looking for a way to really fade this guy at a good price. And on the other hand, it's Cejudo, a guy I really like. Met him in Atlanta, rocking his shirt. You had to make my wife and I a cameo video for the wedding, which I threw up on my Twitter today. You guys need to go watch it. It's gold. And he's the last person that I want to fade, to be honest with you, But I think activity does and will play a big factor in here. While they do have some asterisks, you're talking about some elite bantamweights in the world that Aljo stood across from lately, and making it close with Peter Yan looks good. The performance over Corey Sandhagen in a round 1 stoppage like he had looks even better after the way Sandhagen's looked lately. And you kind of did touch on it. TJ was pretty much, maybe not one arm, but definitely compromised coming into the Henry fight as well. Henry has the great wrestling. Aljo has good wrestling. But I think you can kind of flip it and say Henry's got good jiu-jitsu and Aljo's got great jiu-jitsu, man. And that kind of levels up his wrestling a little bit, because if he can get the takedown, if he can get the scramble, he's got a nasty body triangle like he talked about that he's able to ride out that position. And if Aljo has any success here, that is how I see it, because I do think it's relatively close on the feet, with it definitely leaning toward Henry down the stretch. This guy comes in phenomenal shape. One of the best camps as far as, the weight cutting. They have it down to a science. If you've not listened to him on Joe Rogan before, he's brought his coaches, he's brought his nutritionists on for the Neuroforce One. They dive really deep into it. Again, they literally have it down to a science. And then his camp in general is just one of the best camps as far as game planning. He really comes out here with a game plan in mind and sticks to it. He's a guy, you talked about mentality. The guy's just always rose to the moment, winning an Olympic gold medal. So hard to do. 21 years old when he's doing that. He said today in the presser, Aljo's got 26 college losses while he's over here winning a gold medal. The double champ. It's a guy you're not gonna see me getting on the other side of. The DJ fight, the first time you see him kind of not have a clinch game to him, and DJ destroyed him in the clinch and sent him pack and got him his first loss of his career. Since coming back, man, Henry's leveled up his clinch game phenomenally. His knees in the clinch are super nice. The way he sets up his inside trips from the clinch. Henry is, the guy was a lifelong wrestler and is still less than 20 fights into his MMA career or something. Like, there's still a world where Henry Cejudo is getting better in each camp, on the feet, I think you're going to see Aljo do what he does best, man. I think he's going to throw a shit ton of volume in those first 2 rounds. And I think after that, you're going to see him start to take a dip off and Henry really start to put the pace on. You see him do that in the Peter Yan fight. You see Henry Cejudo kind of have the same game plan against Marlon Moraes and let him throw all that volume early, get him into a fight where he's throwing a ton of volume and where you can outlast him. So there is a couple things that do get me on the Henry Cejudo side. That's who I'm going to lean with. But I don't think I'm going to have a bet on the main event on Saturday, man. Moving on to our co-main. I said props to these guys. You got Gilbert Burns and Belal Muhammad taking a 5-round number 1 contender fight here on just a couple weeks' notice. And I told you I'm a little bit torn. I give them their props where it's due. But the other number 1 contender sitting there is Shavkat Rakhmonov, and I don't think either one of them want a part of him at this moment. Another guy in Burns who's had the activity on his side. This will be his 3rd fight, and it's just the beginning of May. And we did talk about him a couple weeks ago, when he beat Masvidal. Since moving up, the guy looks good. He's not as drained. I don't think he's as good of a technical boxer as Belal, but, hands down, twice the power of Belal, twice the stopping power in a fight, and world-class ground game. Gilbert Burns, the last 3 performances for me were like 100% a step in the right direction. The Wonder Boy, Magny, and George performances, they're clean. He goes out, he gets his takedowns. He goes out, George, plays it safe, and he's able to jump back in some camps and be active. But I am a bit concerned, 3 camps now, 3 weight cuts. Is it going to eventually wear on him? And now that he's got 5 rounds to do it in, it's a little bit concerned because I'm not sold on his ability to fight a hard 5 rounds. He puts a lot into his shots, uses a lot of energy to to get the takedowns. And that will cause him to fade a little bit in this fight. And I don't think we see Belal fading one bit, Plus 125 opening on Belal, a bit intriguing, but we both thought the line was going to move the opposite direction. Burns, I thought, getting a ton of hype after the Chimaev fight. And then he just, retires Masvidal in Miami. And nobody's high on Belal, man. People shit on this guy all the time. So was quite shocked to see the way that the line's moving. But I kind of get it. I do. While Belal doesn't do anything great, the guy blends his skill sets together very, very well. He puts you on the back foot. He has a good volume. He has a gas tank for days. He's tough as shit, man. And when he gets you down, he's more about winning the fight, controlling you rather than giving up positions and letting guys back to his feet. He shows good fight IQ, and it's very easy to back when you see a plus money ticket come out. When I see what causes Belal issues, I see tall, lanky strikers. I see guys who are southpaw with good kicks and left hands, guys like Jeff Neal, like Leon Edwards, and I don't see a lot of that in Gilbert Burns. So I think the line is pretty dang close that it closed into a pickle, man. I'm going to side with Belal, but no action in the main or the co-main event, man. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's a tough fight for me to break down, man. Honestly, whenever this was first announced, I thought I had it all figured out because I thought it was a 3-round fight. But yeah, the 25 minutes, it throws a huge curveball into how I look at it. You touched on the most concerning part of the fight is Gilbert's quick turnaround. He did make easy work of Masvidal, but just jumping back that quickly, 36 years old, it just seems like he's jumping the gun to get another fight, which to his credit, that's something that he needs to do to be able to get the next title shot. He's had his chance a couple of times, and He's definitely got to stick out from the crowd, and just beating, one or two guys every year, it's not going to do it. So I definitely don't blame him for taking the fight, especially like you said, Shavkat waiting in the shadows. It's much better to take this fight with Belal. As far as this fight breaks down, I really struggle to find the advantages that Belal has on Burns outside of his cardio. I think on the feet, Belal is a cleaner boxer, but I think that the power that Burns throws with is, equally concerning, and it kind of negates the possible minute winning of Belal with the big moments when those huge hooks do land of Gilbert Burns. I think the ultimate, as far as the wrestling department, the ultimate trump card is Burns' BJJ accolades. It's a tough sell to anyone that isn't just the highest level of wrestler like Colby or Kamara Usman, that it's a good idea to shoot on somebody with a submission game like Burns. I know we haven't really seen Burns have many submissions off his back, but I think you'd be silly to think that a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner doesn't have that in his repertoire. I think we see a world where Burns is unsuccessful getting Belal out in those first 3 rounds, but if that is the case, I could definitely see where Belal backers could see the 4-5 decision being something that they'd like to target, because that is the most likely time that he's going to actually be winning minutes in my eyes. That being said, Burns does carry the power into the later rounds. So although his strikes come few and far between after that 15-minute mark, they are just as dangerous, and it just takes one shot that we've seen Belal been hit with many of times to win a round. So as the line comes down, I'm tempted to take the Burns money line if it gets to even money, but I'm actually looking at Burns inside the distance. I think that Belal has shown some durability issues in the past. Burns is probably the biggest power puncher that he's faced to date, or at least on par with the Luques or the Jeff Neals. And he doesn't really have the option to go crotch sniffing if he does get hurt on the feet.
Right.
So
Yeah, good point.
I do think that Burns inside the distance is the way that I'm looking at it. But if the line continues to creep down, I have no problem putting a little bit of money on Burns' money line, as he has proven a little bit more to me at the highest level. I'm a little bit more comfortable backing him.
Don't hate it.
As far as our featured bout of the evening, we move down to the 115-pound women's strawweight, where we see Jessica Andrade taking on Xiaonan. I think that we have a little bit of different fight, as we've talked a little bit beforehand. I'll start by saying that I think that this line would be a little bit wider if we didn't see Jessica Andrade just lose to Erin Blanchfield in her last fight. It was short notice. It was against a bigger girl, and Blanchfield, extremely legit. There's potential to be a future champion. And for what it's worth, I think initially I was happy that Jessica Andrade went out there, was able to land some of her power shots and just get the fight on the feet. But it was short-lived when you saw in the second round her start to slow down and Erin Blanchfield start to take over. As far as Jan, though, we're down a weight class in Jessica's true weight class, and I think Jan is great everywhere, but great everywhere, doesn't have too many defensive holes. But she doesn't do too much for me offensively. I think that she can outwork her opponents, keep a good defensive range for most of her fights, and that's done well for her over her career. But I look down at some of the losses that she's had. Getting finished by Esparza. I know styles make fights, but that's a tough look for anybody. Esparza isn't finishing very many girls. And then the Marina Rodriguez fight. I'll give it to her. I think that could definitely be easily a win on Yao Zhanan's record. But it's another, it's a striker. I know that it's a much longer striker, but it's a striker that's getting the best of her. And then the comparisons with Dern, I think that we kind of have to throw those out the window. I think Jessica Andrade and Dern, to try and draw parallels in that fight,
There is
straws. So I don't know. I think once you throw that performance out the window, I'm going to go with Andrade, just being that she has shown us the the consistency at a high level. You know, hasn't done anything too impressive. And I think that if this was a 5-round fight, I'd be much more willing to take Jan at this price, especially. But it only being 3 rounds and it not being on short notice, I think that this is set up for Jessica Andrade's power to at least last 2 of the 3 rounds. And if not get the finish, get the nod on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, little bit of a different opinion here. You know, I got a 1-unit underdog shot on Xiaonan at plus 160, and I'm tempted to go back to the well with another unit on her money line, or maybe even inside the distance at plus 800. Man, it's a wide line for a girl in Jessica Andrade who's only 31, but a ton of fight miles, man. Been to the top of 115, been to the top of 125, and just moving weight classes. It's not a good look for a girl who does, in my opinion, seem to be on the tail end of the career. And she's been finished in 7 of her 10 losses, man. That was something that was quite a bit of a shocker to me. Not been the most durable girl throughout the history in the UFC. Coming off the loss, you know, I knew when the fight got to the mat, Erin Blanchfield was the far superior ground opponent. But I was quite shocked to see Erin have the success that she did in the boxing and you know, land the hands the way she did on Jessica Andrade. Andrade is going to have the power edge in almost every single time she fights, no matter what weight class she ends. But I think she struggles to close the distance on Yan Xiaonan without getting hit clean. I think she throws a lot more looping shots, while Yan Xiaonan throws a whole lot straighter shots. And I think she's going to catch her coming in. And while I look at what Yan struggles with, I think she struggles with wrestlers, people with good top control. And sure, Andrade dropped Rose on her head, but name me another time where she's came out here with a super grappling heavy game plan and 1 minute by, you know, stalling girls on the ground. It's very few and far between. We've seen Jan move to Team Alpha Male, working on the defensive grappling every single day. I think she does a really good job of stuffing these takedowns, anything that's offered from Andrade. And if it's kept on the feet, I think I got the longer volume edge. I think I got the better boxer. And while Andrade is a smaller girl, I think, again, the looping hooks, she's going to be faster, but Jan is just going to be able to match that speed, just being the whole lot straighter of a fighter, better footwork. I like her chances to win a whole lot at plus 160, man. And I've gotten to the well on her this week.
I love the confident take for sure. We'll move on to the fight of the night section, where I'm sticking with the women here, and I took Marina Rodriguez taking on Virna Jandiroba. Clash of styles matchup here.
Yeah.
You know, we've got Marina Rodriguez, who's made waves in the division with her striking skills and just her sheer size at 115 pounds. And then matched up against a primary wrestler grappler in Jandiroba, who's, you know, made it known in her fights that getting her opponent to the mat is her main path to victory. She's averaging almost 2.5 takedowns per fight. And if you look down her record, you know, barring that Murato KO, it's evident that she needs that takedown to have the most success in her fights. Funny enough, it's the wrestling abilities of Marina's past opponents that have plagued her career in the UFC, with all of her losses coming to girls who had success getting her to the mat during their fights. Even her last 4 wins, she actually fell victim to at least one takedown in every single one of those fights. I think the line's kind of gotten away from us now as far as the Jandiroba, but it's definitely tempting to take the obvious style mismatch here. You know, even with steady improvements over Marina's career at 36 years old, having never seen a flawless performance that's answered those wrestling concerns of her, I really want to play Jandiroba. You know, when it comes to women's MMA, it's just kind of especially with a stylistic matchup, you having to pay juice on Marina Rodriguez. It's tough. I don't even care if she has some, you know, twice the striking on the feet. It's just silly to look past her previous performances, where she hasn't shown a sense of urgency to get off her back when she has been taken down. And when you give up rounds after getting taken down, it's difficult to come back without the possibility of a finish, which we've only seen one time since Marina was signed off the Contender Series. So for me, I think I'm leaning Jandiroba, and sitting at plus money, it's hard not to take it, even though I've seen a massive line miss, you know?
Yeah, wish I was one of the people with the plus 175 on Virna, because it's a no-brainer. You know, you talked about value. I learned it again last week. Value's always on the women's underdogs. You know, superior grappler of the two, seen it cause Marina issues in the past. over 2.5 takedowns per fight she's averaging, and we've seen Marina taken down in all but 2 of her UFC fights. So, man, super live at the opening odds. But the advantage that Virna holds on the mat, man, I think Marina holds just as much of an advantage on the feet, maybe a little bit of a slightly more, man. I don't like what I see some Virna on the feet. It's a 1-2 to close distance. I think she slows down a whole lot at range. And we're talking about a girl, Marina, who's, had Amanda Hebus on her for a whole entire first round, a girl who's had a fight with Mackenzie Dern and not been submitted before. So maybe she does enough to stay safe on the mat and wins a whole lot of these minutes on the feet. And you don't really know what the judges are going to favor more. I do just it's easy to favor the grappler plus money because boom, Marina's winning all the minutes. She gets taken down in the last 2 minutes, minute of a round, and it's Virna's round, So I think it's a close 29-28 decision. I don't want to force anything with the value being gone, but clash of styles 100%. Heavily debated fight on MMA Twitter, man. Really good fight to choose this week. I lost Evloev and Bryce Mitchell, which was going to be my fight, but I think I got an equally exciting fight in Drew Dober and Matt Frevola here. Both of these guys always come to put on a show. They're on winning streaks at the moment. Drew Dober, I think 3 in a row now, all by TKO, steamroller, 2 fights in a row. He's won both inside the distance. But it's a good fight for Drew Dober as far as his chances to win, but it does seem Matt getting the rewarded with the big step up in competition in his backyard here. When I look at the people Drew Dober's recently beat, one of them's Terrence McKinney, who's knocked out Frevola in 7 seconds, and the other one's Bobby Green, which I definitely hold in a higher regard than Matt Frevola. And I know Rafael Alves is not on the UFC roster anymore, but dude, he can cause issues for a whole lot of people, and I might line him and Matt Frevola at a damn near pick 'em, Realistically, when I look at the line, I think it makes sense, man. Dober has the much better striking. He's more technical. He has the power. He throws more kicks. And in the pocket, he's a whole lot more comfortable and a guy who I trust his chin a whole lot more as well. The issue being the takedown defense, his defensive grappling. I don't know if Matt's going to be able to do it. He's held long guys like Pena and Turner down, but he really had no choice but to wrestle there because he was at such a length disadvantage. And sometimes when you get those taller guys down, it's harder for them to get their legs up underneath them, get back to the mat. I thought Matt was going to wrestle in the Ottman and Valdez fights, and nope, he goes out and stands and bangs. So it's like, I wish I was more confident in Matt Frevola going to wrestle here, but then I also am worried – how much can Frevola really hold Dober down? Dober's getting held down for extended periods of minutes by like Islam, but it's still taken to the 3rd round to submit Drew Dober. I don't know if Dober's going to be held down for long enough that he just doesn't pop back to the feet, win the minutes on the feet, and possibly find the chin of Matt Frevola, who in the past been a little bit reckless, giving me reasons to not trust the chin. I want to back the guy. Told the story, sat behind him and his wife and brother when he fought Jalen Turner in Atlanta. I'd love nothing more for the guy to come out here and win in his backyard, but I got Drew Dober by TKO, man. You got any input here?
Yeah, man, I got one word for you. Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell landed 1 takedown in all of his UFC fights. He lands 5 against Drew Dober, man. I think, it is tough to trust Matt Frevola here, but knowing that he has the skills to do it, like you said, in the Jalen Turner or the Luis Pena fight, I'm fairly confident that he knows he's got to do that here. The blueprint's been laid out. Drew Dober's been beaten the same way every single time in his career. And I think that Matt Frevola has the skill set to do it. Sure, he hasn't in his last 2, but he's taking O's, man, and he's doing it in the right way, He's exciting. I'll end up talking a little bit more about it later on, but I do think that Matt Frevola has the answer to Drew Dober.
Nice.
Moving on to our fighter to watch. My fighter to watch, he's been circulating Twitter pretty often for his haircut this week. It's Zhalgas Zhumagulov.
Zaddy the baddie.
Zaddy the baddie. Zhalgas Zhumagulov is a 34-year-old who's 1-5 in his last 6 UFC fights, and they're still giving him another fight. I think the UFC understands that he has been absolutely robbed his entire career on the judges' scorecards. And the ongoing joke is that he got the patty cut so he can get the nod on the judges' scorecards. And I don't know, man. I'm fairly happy with the line right now. You know, I've been tempted to play Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I know that his back's against the wall, and he's got to know that as well. So making him my fighter to watch was a pretty easy pick this week.
I'm gonna pick his opponent, Rafael Estevam, for my fighter to watch here. Undefeated guy, you know, out of Brazil, 11-0, Dana White Contender Series guy. He trains in Nova Unal, you know, Jose Aldo, Mateus Nicolau, Leo Santos. I expect this guy and have seen this guy have elite BJJ, and he's going to have a nice little size edge on Zalgas like most guys do. Man, he comes at Estevan fights at a very, very high pace. It's a relentless takedown pressures type of fighting, phenomenal jiu-jitsu. And I think that's why we're going to see him have more success against Zalgas than guys like Johnson and Molina did. You know, these guys tried to strike with Zalgas, and Zalgas has got some decent footwork and switch stance. He knows how to make fights really close on the feet. But if you look at some of his record, or look at not his record, look at his fights. The one loss to Albazi, you know, it's the game plan here that I see Estevan with that causes him issues and those takedowns. But you go to the regional scene, their wins, man. But the loss to or the win over Bagutinov and Habib's boy, it's some crooked wins, man. He spends a lot of time getting taken down, a lot of time getting stalled out. And I think Estevam has the game plan to be able to do the same here. I've kind of been the opposite of you. I've tried to always fade Master Z in the UFC, you know, a little bit, you know, profitable for me, regardless of if I've been gifted some judges' decisions. But I think it kind of just proves to the judges don't really like his style. It doesn't seem like the UFC, I don't think they've given him a fight that he's necessarily been, they want him to win. It seems like they're propping up their Molinas, their Johnsons. He's 34 at flyweight. And whether it was an emotional decision coming off of the bad decisions, retirement, coming back, it's nothing you really like to see. So I've beat the line movement. I got a unit on Estevam here. I got to ride the train of fading Zalgas. So Estevan's going to be my fighter to watch this Saturday.
Hey, it's plus EV. I can't blame you, man.
It is.
Moving on to our underdog section of the podcast. It's tough. I don't like many dogs on here. I love going dog hunting, but the only one that's sticking out to me is the one we've already touched on a little bit, and it's Virna Jandiroba. Obvious style mismatch here. You can get her at plus money. She's proven that she can hold down way better strikers in the past, and Marina's proven the exact opposite, that she can get held down by honestly, some of the girls that she's been taken down by, they're worse grapplers than Virna Jandiroba. So I do think that all the evidence is there for a women's plus money underdog. So I am taking Virna Jandiroba as my dog.
Nice, man. I got an underdog on my card this week. Very, very confident in Xiaonan plus 160. And again, I think I am going to drop maybe another unit in total some way around her. Feature bout of the evening. So you heard why I like this girl a lot. What I see causes her issues is Esparza, Dern, girls who can take her down, girls who have phenomenal top control. I'd be very shocked if I saw Jessica Andrade land 5 takedowns and ride out 12 minutes of, 9-10 minutes of control time here. It's just not her style. You got Xiaonan coming off of a 5-round fight, training out of Team Alpha Male now. I think this girl's improving at a very good rate, and I think we've seen the best of Jessica Andrade. On the feet, I cannot get to a Jessica Andrade almost 2-to-1 price tag. I can't do it, man. She's at a couple inch reach disadvantage, height disadvantage. And while she has the power edge, again, I go back to her winging a lot of her punches. And I think that speed edge she has is going to be negated by the better boxing, by the straight punches of Andrade. I think she's going to use her excellent footwork, get out of the way of a lot of these big hooks. And to see a fight that's lined like 68-32, I don't see that, man. I see a fight that's 50-50 at worst. And if I see a fight that plays out for 15 minutes on the feet, I think Xiaonan could honestly look like a favorite here. So I think I have a perceived 20% edge on what I'm looking at right now. And so we've talked about it this week. I got to hit this pick hard if I'm that confident in it. Xiaonan going to be my underdog this week.
I like it. Moving on to our prop section of the podcast, I'm going with, and it's my only play of the card so far, Matt Frevola by decision. I've
Nice.
kind of already talked about. I think that the tools are there. It's taken a leap of faith on whether or not Matt Frevola is going to use it, but the tools are there.
Yep.
And then as far as Drew Dober, there's a possibility that he gets subbed. Matt Frevola, I don't think that his submission offense is dangerous enough that he's going to get it, but I do think that he's going to try and get it to the mat and control him. Good luck knocking out Drew Dober. He's had 37 fights in his career, and he's been knocked out once. I think that this has Matt Frevola by decision written all over it, and you can get it at a great price at plus 460 on FanDuel.
Yeah, man, it's almost like the Boudet bet last week. It's like you said, good luck finishing Drew Dober, and if Matt Frevola wins this fight, 9 times out of 10 to me, it's by decision. Great number on it. For me, I'm going to go Braxton Smith and Parker Porter under 1.5. I got it at minus 175. Not sure what it's sitting at right now. I know it's seeing some love, might be a parlay piece, but I do like this prop a lot. It's under 1.5, which I'm not always a big fan of, but we got some big heavyweights here, and we got one of them in Braxton Smith, who's never even seen a third minute of a fight. The guy's 5'11", 260 pounds, almost like William Knight, dude. Just an absolute solid ball of muscle. He comes in 2014. Chase Sherman knocks him out in under a minute. We don't see the guy again for 8 years. And now he's returned and fought 5 times in the calendar year. He's finished every single one of these guys in under 3 minutes, but they are very bad competition. And he finished one guy in, I think, under a minute, and a fight later fights him again and finishes him in a minute. So there's no Dana White Contender Series, nothing here with Braxton Smith. Not too sure, outside of looking at his, sheer physique, why the UFC has him in the organization. His likely path to victory is a first-round TKO, and Porter's been knocked out in the first round in like 90% of his losses. But I think if that doesn't happen early in this fight, we're going to see Braxton Smith cardio go down the drain. Parker has, I'm going to honestly say, elite cardio for a guy of that size, man. And he really knows how to use the weight. We'll put it on you, make you carry it on the fence. And I think that's going to drain Braxton even more. I don't think Braxton can survive 7.5 minutes in a cage if he hasn't found the finish. So under 1.5, going to be my prop this week, man.
Elite and Parker Porter is 2 words you don't see in a sentence very often. For the best bet section of the card, I'm going with Henry Cejudo. Now, I haven't made this bet, but I do think that at the current odds, we're really getting some value on Henry Cejudo here. I know the layoff's a big concern, but I just think that mentally he's twice the fighter of Aljamain Sterling. I hope that it's not just bias that's taken over my mind right now, but I do like Henry Cejudo. I think that he has better striking. He's the more cerebral striker. He obviously has better wrestling. And the only way that Aljo wins this fight, in my eyes, is backpacking him like he did in Peter Yan. That's still a super, super close fight. And that's the best possible outcome for Aljo in my head. I think Henry Cejudo gets it done with a head kick on Saturday. So Henry Cejudo is my best bet.
I dig it, man. Almost a gut shot to me here, man. I had Daniel Santos 2 units on him, and that was a spot that I really, really liked this week. But in hindsight, I'm happy to not go in 2 units deep on a guy who's potentially injured coming into a fight, So changing my best bet around, it's nothing I have put out yet, but I'm just kind of debating on how many units I want to wager on this. I got Chaos Williams inside the distance at minus 150. I feel very confident in him to find the finish here. It's more than likely by TKO, but I don't want to get greedy over a 10-15 cent difference there. The guy's got legit power. I think he can knock anybody in the welterweight division out. And what I like even more is, damn, Chaos can take a shot, man. He can eat a shot as well. And that can take you a long way in MMA. He's fought the far better competition. And looking at this Rolando Bedoya guy, I'm not sure why he's getting his shot to Chaos Williams, really. He's fought low-level Peruvian guys on the regional scene. I've seen him hurt by far worse caliber guys. To me, it seems like a spot to get Chaos Williams back here on track. I'd have to look. Maybe Chaos is from the Northeast or something because, again, I'm very confident in him, man. It does seem like this is a step in the right direction for him to just get his patented first-round knockout. Chaos Williams, inside the distance, minus 150 when it's in the first round. I think it could look pretty generous on Saturday.
I like it. I like it. We'll move on to our quick pick section of the podcast where we just go from bottom to top up the card. We start off the night in the middleweight division where we see Joseph Holmes taking on Claudio Ribeiro. It's tough. I want to take the shot on Joseph Holmes, but it's really tough to trust him in this spot. For the quick pick section, I'll go Joseph Holmes, but wouldn't be laying my own money on it.
I think I'm going to go with you with the underdog here, man. And we see a guy who's plus 180 against Jung Yun Park, and I do know he gets finished in the second round, but he should be plus 180 to a Claudio Ribeiro guy here. I don't buy it, man. I think there is a finish here. I think that's a good parlay piece, and I'm going to take the underdog in the first fight as well in Joseph Holmes. Moving down, men's flyweight, Estevam versus August. I got Estevam. I think he, again, just going to win a whole lot of minutes. August is a hard dude to finish, and I know that's why I only got one unit on it, because a lot of times I got to sweat it when I fade August. So Estevam for the win here for me.
Starting it off with a disagreement. I think I'm on the Zhalgas Zhumagulov side. I haven't pulled the trigger or anything yet, but man, he makes any fight close. So getting him at plus money, it's tempting every time. I'm not really upset anytime that he wins because he covers his price tag just about any fight that he's in.
Yep.
So I'm going with Zhalgas Zhumagulov. Moving up to the 185-pound division, Ikram Aliskerov taking on Phil Hawes. I'm going with another dog here. I think I'm going Phil Hawes, actually. I know he's been wrestling with some Dagestanis recently, and chin is a little bit of a concern, but I think that he's a pretty elite fighter. I think he's got good striking, good cardio, and he's got the wrestling as well. So I think he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. It's just scary he's going up against a Russian. But as far as a dog price, I really like him, and I'll pick him to win as well.
On the dog side again, man, Phil Hawes, if he wasn't coming off like a knee injury and he had a chin, man, I would be all over this price tag. Phenomenal D1 wrestler, striking and in a Mavov fight and stuff for a fight. A guy I thought maybe had some cardio issues. He's almost answered those for me as well. If the guy had any type of durability to him, I'd be on the Phil Hall side as well. But for the podcast's sake, I'll tell you, man, I like him to win. Parker Porter versus Braxton Smith at 265 pounds. Man, the first 3 minutes, I guess Braxton's live to take his head off. After that, Parker Porter to me could be the bet of the card, to be honest with you. Give me Parker Porter, man.
Yeah, I'm going to go Parker Porter just because I do think that if he just plays his cards right, he just can ball up, wait for dude to gas out, and then he'll take over. Like you said, he's just a much better, much more well-rounded MMA fighter. It'd be tough to see Porter lose to somebody like Braxton Smith after seeing his tape. So I'll go Porter as well. Moving down to the women's strawweight division, Marina Rodriguez taking on Virna Jandiroba. I've already talked about it. Jandiroba is my dog of the week. I'm not sure if the bet's going to get there for me, but I do like her to win. Seems like me saying that it's a must play. So maybe I'll be on Virna Jandiroba.
I'm going to side on the other side of Marina Rodriguez. And it's with no real conviction, but seeing her play it safe against some girls, Virna, man, I don't know. Virna's just like takedown or bust. And if she can't get it, I like Marina to light her up on the feet. Chaos Williams versus Rolando Bedoya. Just talked about it. Best bet, Chaos Williams inside the distance. First round knockout, man.
I'm not quite as confident. I'll go Chaos. I don't know much about the Rolando Bedoya, but I don't know. I'll go Chaos here. I don't love the price tag though, so no bet from me, but I'll pick Chaos to get the win. Moving up to the light heavyweight division, Devin Clark versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. It's tough to trust Kennedy with a favorite price tag. Yep. I don't really like it at all. He gets into some really, really close fights. But on the same side, it's like Devin Clark finds ways to lose fights, man. He's undersized. He's a blown up 185er, and he's fighting the biggest dude in the division. Maybe I think physically it's the biggest dude in the division for real. So I don't know. It's hard to pick Devin Clark here, although it's like it's kind of the same thing as the Matt Frevola. I see the tools, they're there, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do it for 3 rounds against Kennedy. I've got Kennedy.
Yeah, so many underdogs here that I think stand a chance, but they're just not the quality of fighter I want to back, and that's the case in Devin Clark here. I'm going to pick Kennedy and Zechuku, 3rd round decision. I like that prop for him. Prelim main event, Drew Dober, Matt Frevola. I feel like the most value you hound in on it, is Frevola's decision prop here, but sadly, in front of all the cheering steamroller fans, I think Drew Dober's going to get the TKO, man.
Yeah, I'm going with Matt Frevola, hometown. Drew Dober on a 3-fight win streak. That just tells me he's due for a loss, dude. Drew Dober is not somebody who's put together just a consistent winning record. So I do think that he's due for one. And Matt Frevola kind of seems like that apple pie shitter. So I'm going with Matt Frevola there to win by decision. Moving up to the first fight on the main card, the featherweight division, Kron Gracie versus Charles Jourdain. I don't like Kron as a person at all. After watching, a little bit of Embedded, seeing him in the past, I don't like Kron Gracie. I do think that the only way to play this fight is Kron Gracie to win by submission or the Jourdain money line. I'm going to pick Kron Gracie. I want to fade Charles Jourdain because he's you never know what kind of fight you're going to get. It's probably not the highest IQ. So I'm going with Kron Gracie. I think he'll find the sub some way.
So even more than the Virna Marina fight, you get a better price tag on a guy with better jiu-jitsu and another style where Jourdain's taken down in every single fight. So I'm more likely to bet Kron Gracie than I am Virna Jandiroba. Going to pick another dog here in Kron Gracie to get the submission. Movsar Evloev taking on short notice replacement Diego Lopez here on short notice, 145. I don't know who's going to win this one. No, just kidding. I got Movsar. You're looking at like a minus 800 price tag. So he decisions everybody. So it's like, do you try to play in minus 800 inside the distance to get a good tag? I don't know, man. It's a stay away from me now. Movsar is going to be the pick, obviously, though.
Yeah, I just say lay off. Yeah. I've got Movsar as well. I don't know. It's a Brazilian he's going up against. I haven't done my research on Lopez, but seems like maybe a meme guillotine, incoming. I have no idea. But
Movsar does like to stick his neck there.
Yeah, I could see it happening now, but I'll pick Movsar for the sake of the podcast. Moving down to the strawweight division, Jessica Andrade versus Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan. And I'm going with Jessica Andrade. Okay, it's a tough one. I just think that she'll be a moment winner in a 15-minute fight, and I think without the possibility of gassing over 5 rounds, she's much more inclined to kind of release the power that she needs to win 2 rounds out of the 3 or get the finish.
Yeah, I hate to have you on the other side, but at the end of the day, I got to trust my gut and I got to trust my read, and I'm going to side on the other side with the underdog, Yan Xiaonan, and don't be surprised if you see me drop some more units on her in some way. Co-main event, scheduled for 5 rounds. Belal Muhammad taking on Gilbert Burns. I don't know, man. The next 2 fights, I don't have the hardest opinion on. Another underdog, Belal Muhammad.
I'm going Gilbert Burns here. Same reasons for Jessica Andrade. It's just like I think Burns will be the moment winner. That it being 5 rounds is pretty scary, but like I said, I'm kind of looking at Burns inside the distance. I think he'll club him once or get him to shoot, and he'll wrap him up. So I got Burns. Moving on to the main event, Aljamain Sterling taking on Henry Cejudo. I've got Triple C, man. I think he gets it done. He's got the mentality. He's got the winning mentality, and I think Henry's gonna get it done.
I like it, man. I'm going to side with Henry Cejudo as well. As much as Aljo has the length and the size, the mindset, the skill set, the game planning, man, Henry's a tactician, and I think he's going to show it again on Saturday. I like him to come away with the belt, fight Sean O'Malley, fight Alexander Volkanovski, and put himself up there on the Mount Rushmore of MMA, man. So Henry Cejudo for me as well. We lost one of my favorite fights in Daniel Santos, so we are down to 13 fights total. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with us while we tip out some of our better fights and best bets on the card. Make sure you guys are catching it Saturday with us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.